The Mourning Ground. The twin suns of Xerion Prime cast long crimson shadows across the scarred landscape as Zara knelt beside the small mound of stones she had carefully arranged 3 weeks ago. Her azure skin, marked with the intricate silver patterns of her people's grief rituals, seemed to absorb the dying light. Each stone represented a memory, a moment stolen by war, a future that would never bloom. "Nyx, my starlight," she whispered in the melodic tongue of the Valari, her voice carrying across the desolate moon's surface like a prayer to deaf gods. The name meant night bloomer in the old language, fitting for a child born during their darkest hour, when the human fleets first appeared in their system. Now that darkness had consumed everything. 3 weeks ago, the human orbital strike had shattered their mining colony. Zara remembered every detail with crystalline clarity: the warning sirens that came too late, Keth shoving their 5-year-old daughter toward the emergency shelters while he stayed behind to help others evacuate. The ground splitting open like a wound, the screaming, the silence that followed. She had found Nyx's small form buried beneath twisted metal and concrete, so still, so pale. Those large, curious eyes that once sparkled with questions about stars and stories were closed forever. Zara had cradled the tiny body for hours, her own heart shattering like the shattered dome above them. Now she traced the symbols etched into the largest stone, ancient Valari runes that spoke of love transcending, death of souls reuniting in the star fields beyond. But the words felt hollow. How could there be reunion when she remained here, trapped in this prison of grief? "I failed you, little star," Zara whispered, her throat constricting with unshed tears. "I couldn't protect you from their hatred. I couldn't save you from their war." The wind picked up, carrying the acrid scent of burned earth and melted metal. Somewhere in the distance, the wreckage of their habitat dome still smoldered. Most survivors had been evacuated to the inner worlds, but Zara refused to leave. How could she abandon Nyx to this lonely place? Her people, the Valari, had always been peaceful. Their greatest achievement was the cultivation of singing crystals that could store and transmit emotions across vast distances. They had hoped to share this gift with other species, to build bridges of understanding through shared feeling. Instead, humanity had seen only the strategic value of their crystals for communications technology. The war had lasted 2 years. 2 years of watching her people's beautiful worlds burn, of seeing Keth volunteer for increasingly dangerous missions, of holding Nyx close while explosions lit up the night sky. And for what? The humans had won, claimed their system, and now her daughter lay cold beneath alien stones. Zara pressed her palm against the grave marker, feeling the rough texture of the volcanic rock she had chosen because Nyx had always loved, collecting pretty stones. "I dream of you," she confessed to the gathering dusk. "I dream that I hear your laughter, that I feel your little hand in mine. But I wake up, and you're still gone." A distant sound made her pause, a low humming that seemed to come from the sky itself. Probably another human patrol, she thought bitterly. They maintained a presence here now, mining the rich deposits that her people had worked for generations. Everything belonged to them now. But as the sound grew closer, something stirred in her chest, a sensation she hadn't felt since the day she lost everything. It was faint, almost imagined, but for just a moment it felt like hope. Zara looked up at the darkening sky and her breath caught in her throat. The hidden ward captain Marcus Vale stood at the observation window of the medical frigate Sanctuary, watching the stars drift past in their eternal dance. His weathered hands gripped a steaming cup of synthetic coffee as he wrestled with a decision that could end his career or start a war. Behind him, soft humming drifted from the isolation ward. Not human humming, but something far more melodic, almost crystalline in its purity. Dr. Amelia Torres had been working with their unexpected patient for 3 weeks now, and the sound had become as familiar as the ship's engine rhythm. "She's asking for her mother again," Dr. Torres said quietly as she approached, her lab coat stained with the peculiar silver fluid that served as Valari blood. Despite her exhaustion, Amelia's dark eyes held a warmth that had made her the best xenobiologist in the fleet, Marcus turned from the window. How is she? Physically? She's remarkable. The combination of human medical nanites and salvaged Valari healing crystals has accelerated her recovery beyond anything I've seen. Her bones have mended, the internal bleeding has stopped, and her neural activity is completely normal. Amelia paused, brushing a strand of gray-streaked hair from her face. Emotionally? She's a 5-year-old who survived a bombing and doesn't understand why her mama hasn't come for her. Through the transparent aluminum partition, Marcus could see the small figure curled up on the bio bed. Nyx, they had learned her name from her fevered mumblings during the first critical days, looked so fragile despite the miraculous recovery. Her azure skin bore the same intricate silver patterns as all Valari, but hers were still developing, creating delicate filigree across her small features. Mama Zara, Nyx had whispered that morning when Amelia brought her breakfast. When Mama Zara come? The question had haunted Marcus all day. According to their intelligence reports, there were no survivors from Sector 7 of the Zirion colony. The orbital strike had been precise, devastating, complete, yet somehow this child had survived, buried so deep beneath the rubble that even their initial sweeps had missed her. Sergeant Rodriguez had found her during a routine salvage operation, her life signs so faint they barely registered on their scanners. Military protocol demanded they report the discovery immediately, turn her over to the Xenobiology Research Division for study. Instead, Marcus had made a split-second decision that had been eating at him ever since. "Sir," Amelia said, carefully, "I've been monitoring the communications array. There are still scattered Valari settlements on the outer moons. If her mother survived..." "Dr. Torres," Marcus interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Need I remind you that this information is classified at the highest levels? As far as command knows, there were no survivors." But even as he spoke the words, Marcus felt their hollowness. He had been a soldier for 23 years, had followed orders through 3 different conflicts, had earned his command through dedication to duty. Yet watching this child recover, seeing her trust in Amelia's gentle care, had stirred something he thought the war had killed. "She drew this today," Amelia said, producing a datapad. On the screen was a child's drawing, simple but unmistakably, depicting 2 figures with blue skin and silver markings, one large, one small, holding hands beneath what looked like a star field. That's her and her mother. She calls it Mama and Nyx go home. Captain, she doesn't understand that her mother might think she's dead. Every day she asks when she can go home, and every day I have to deflect because I don't know what to tell her. Marcus studied the drawing, his throat tightening. The demilitarized zone extends to all the outer moons. Any unauthorized crossing would be considered an act of aggression, I know. My orders are to maintain our position and await further instructions regarding our cargo. I know that too. They stood in silence, watching Nyx trace patterns on the bio-bed's surface with her small finger, the same intricate designs that covered her skin. According to their cultural databases, those patterns told the story of a Valari's family line, their achievements, their connections to their community. This child carried the history of her people written on her very skin. "There's something else," Amelia said quietly. "I've been analyzing her cellular structure. The trauma from the bombing, the extended time unconscious, the hybrid treatment we used, it's changed her somehow. Her empathic abilities are stronger than any Valari we've encountered. Sometimes when she's dreaming, I swear I can feel what she's feeling." Marcus looked sharply at her. "Feel what?" "Love, loss, hope." Amelia's voice cracked slightly. "Captain, she loves her mother so much that it's like a physical force, and somewhere out there, if Zara is alive, she's probably dying from grief, thinking her child is gone forever." As if summoned by their conversation, Nyx appeared at the partition window, pressing her small palm against the transparent surface. Her large dark eyes, so different from human eyes, like pools of starlight, fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. "Captain Kindman help Nyx go home?" she asked in carefully practiced standard, the word still, carrying the musical quality of her native tongue. Marcus Vale, decorated officer and veteran of countless battles, felt his resolve crumble under the gaze of a 5-year-old alien child. "Dr. Torres," he said quietly, "prep the shuttle." The Forbidden Journey. The shuttle Mercy's Edge drifted through the asteroid field like a ghost, its stealth systems engaged and running silent. Captain Vale sat rigid in the pilot's seat, his knuckles white against the controls as he navigated, between chunks of debris that had once been Valari mining platforms. "Proximity alert," Lieutenant James Knox whispered from the co-pilot's chair, though there was no one to overhear them in the vast emptiness of space. "Valari patrol ship, bearing 27 Mark IV. Vale's fingers danced across the navigation console, adjusting their trajectory to slip behind a particularly large asteroid. "How's our passenger?" In the rear compartment, Dr. Torres sat with Nix curled in her lap, both of them strapped into the acceleration couch. The child had been unusually quiet since they'd left the sanctuary, her large eyes fixed on the viewports as if she could somehow see through the asteroid field to her. "Destination, she knows," Torres murmured, her hand gently stroking Nix's dark hair. "I think she can sense we're close to home." Knox glanced back nervously. "With respect, sir, this is insane. If Command finds out we've gone AWOL with classified alien cargo, then—" "We'd better make sure they don't find out," Vale cut him off. "Besides, she's not cargo, Lieutenant. She's a child." The words hung in the recycled air of the shuttle. Knox had volunteered for this mission without question when Vale had quietly approached him in the mess hall 12 hours ago. Young, idealistic, and still believing that sometimes the right thing mattered more than regulations. Vale envied him that certainty. "Mama Zara sad," Nix said suddenly, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Feel Mama Zara crying." Torres looked up sharply. "Nix, can you really feel your mother from here?" The child nodded solemnly. Mama's heart hurt. Think Nix gone forever. She pressed her small hand against the viewport. "But Nix here. Nix coming. Home." Vale felt something twist in his chest. His own daughter would be about Nix's age now if she had lived. The colony transport that had carried his family to the Centauri system had been destroyed by Valari raiders in the early days of the war. He had spent 2 years telling himself that all Valari were monsters, that their alien minds couldn't comprehend human loss or love. Watching Nix now, seeing the desperate hope in her eyes, he realized how wrong he had been. "Contact on long-range sensors," Knox reported, his voice tight. "Human destroyer Retribution conducting patrol sweep of the DMZ. Captain Hendricks," Vale muttered. The man was a by-the-book officer who would shoot first and ask questions later if he found them here. "Can we avoid them?" "Negative. They're running an active sensor sweep. If we maintain stealth, we might slip past, but—" Knox hesitated. "But what?" "Sir, there's a Valari civilian transport heading straight into their patrol pattern. Small vessel, probably a single occupant. The Retribution is moving to intercept." Vale's blood ran cold. In the current political climate, any Valari vessel found in the DMZ would be considered hostile. Hendricks would destroy it without warning. "Mama!" Nix suddenly cried out, pressing both hands against the viewport. "Mama, in danger!" Torres looked, stricken. "Captain, if that's—" "I know." Vale's mind raced through possibilities, all of them bad. He could maintain stealth and watch an innocent Valari civilian die, or he could break cover and risk exposing their mission. Either choice could start the war all over again. "Sir?" Knox's hand hovered over the communications array. Vale closed his eyes, thinking of his own lost daughter, of the grief that had consumed him for 2 years. Somewhere out there was another parent, another family torn apart by this endless cycle of violence and revenge. "Break stealth, full power to engines, set intercept course for the civilian transport." "Sir, that's—" "An order, Lieutenant." The shuttle's engines roared to life, abandoning all pretense of secrecy. Within seconds, their communications array crackled with incoming transmissions. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Hendricks of the HSS Retribution. You are in violation of the Xerian Accords. Identify yourself immediately or be fired upon." Vale opened the channel. "Captain Hendricks, This is Captain Marcus Vale of the Medical Frigate Sanctuary. I'm conducting a humanitarian mission under Article 7 of the Geneva Conventions. Vale, what the hell are you doing in the DMZ? And what humanitarian mission requires breaking stealth protocols? Before Vale could answer, Nyx's voice filled the shuttle. She was speaking in rapid Valari, her small hands pressed against the communications console. The melodic, crystalline tones of her native language seemed to carry across space itself. "What is that?" Hendricks demanded. "That," Vale said quietly, "is hope, Captain. I'm returning a child to her mother." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. On the tactical display, both human and Valari ships hung motionless in space, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Finally, Hendricks' voice came through. Softer now. "Vale, you magnificent bastard. You've got 10 minutes before I have to report this to command. Make them count." As the shuttle raced toward Zerion Prime's scarred surface, Nyx began to sing, a hauntingly beautiful lullaby that seemed to bridge the gap between species, between war and peace, between loss and hope. In the distance, a small Valari transport changed course, following them home. The approach Zara's breath misted in the thin atmosphere of Zerion Prime as she piloted her damaged transport toward the surface. The ship's hull bore scorch marks from her desperate escape through the DMZ patrol routes, but she had to reach this place, this tomb where her heart lay buried beneath cold stones. The human ship she had seen in orbit haunted her thoughts. For a moment during that strange transmission, she could have sworn she heard, but no. Grief played tricks on the mind. The dead did not sing lullabies across the void. Her transport shuddered as it touched down near the memorial site she had built. The landing was rough. The ship's stabilizers had been damaged during her flight from the inner colonies, where the Valari survivors lived in camps under human oversight. She had stolen this vessel, risking everything for one last chance to say goodbye properly. Stepping onto the scarred ground, Zara felt the weight of 3 weeks' accumulated sorrow settle on her shoulders like a physical burden. The makeshift grave looked smaller than she remembered, more fragile. Had she really thought these few stones could contain all her love for Nyx? "My starlight," she whispered, kneeling beside the memorial. "I brought you something." From her travel pack, she withdrew a small crystal, one of the last singing stones from their family's collection. When activated, it would store her voice, her memories, her love, preserving them until the stars themselves burned out. She pressed it to her lips and began to sing the lullaby she had sung every night since Nyx was born. The melodic Valari words flowed across the desolate landscape. "Little star in darkness gleaming, safe in mother's arms while dreaming. When the night grows cold and long, mother's love will keep you strong." As she sang, tears finally came, not the bitter tears of rage she had shed in the refugee camps, but the healing tears of pure love. Each note carried a memory, Nyx's first word, her delighted laughter when the singing crystals responded to her emotions, the way she would trace her developing heritage patterns while asking endless questions about their ancestors. The sound of approaching engines made her pause. Through the perpetual haze that covered this wounded moon, she could see lights descending, not the harsh white beams of military vessels, but softer illumination. Her hand moved instinctively to the emergency beacon at her belt. If this was a human patrol, she would rather die here beside Nyx than be dragged back to the camps. But the ship that landed nearby was different. Smaller, with medical markings instead of weapons arrays. A shuttle, not a warship. Zara remained frozen beside the grave, unsure whether to run or fight. The shuttle's boarding ramp lowered with a soft hiss. A figure emerged, human, tall, wearing the uniform of their medical corps. Behind him came a woman with kind eyes, and Zara's world stopped. In the woman's arms was a small figure with azure skin and silver patterns, a child who turned at the sound of her mother's voice on the wind and smiled with pure, radiant joy. "Mama," the word shattered Zara's paralysis. She stumbled forward, her legs barely supporting her as reality crashed over her in waves. Nyx, alive, whole, reaching out with small arms, was running toward her across the broken ground. Zara fell to her knees and caught her daughter against her chest, feeling the solid warmth of her, breathing in the familiar scent of starflowers that always seemed to cling to Nyx's hair. For a moment the universe narrowed to just this, her child's heartbeat against her own, the soft whisper of, "Mama, Mama, Mama," in her ear. "I found your body," Zara gasped in standard, looking up at the humans who had returned her miracle. "How?" Captain Vale approached carefully, his hands raised to show he carried no weapons. "She was buried deep. Our scanners almost missed her. Dr. Torres has been caring for her while she healed." Dr. Torres knelt beside them, tears streaming down her face. "She never stopped asking for you, never stopped believing you'd find each other again." Nyx looked up at the approaching lights with curiosity rather than fear. "Mama, why humans and Valari fight? Nyx like Dr. Amelia nice." The question hung in the air between two species that had forgotten how to see each other as anything but enemies. In her daughter's innocent words, Zara heard the echo of what they had all lost. The ability to choose hope over hatred, understanding over revenge. She stood slowly, still holding Nyx close, and extended her hand to Captain Vale. When he took it, she felt something she had thought was lost forever. The possibility of peace. "Thank you," she said simply. "You've given me back everything." Vale nodded, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. "Maybe you can give us something back too. Maybe you can help us remember what we're fighting for instead of what we're fighting against." As the first ships landed and representatives from both species began to gather, Nyx began to sing again, the same lullaby that had crossed the void, now filling the space between former enemies with the sound of healing, the gift of hope. The emergency. Council chamber aboard the neutral station Harmony's Edge had never hosted such an unlikely gathering. Elder Voss, his ancient Valari features marked with the deep heritage patterns of a survivor of 7 wars, sat across from Admiral Rebecca, Chen, whose steel-gray hair and scarred hands spoke of decades defending human space. Between them, on a holographic display, the images of a human captain and a Valari mother played on repeat. "This changes everything," Admiral Chen said quietly, watching the footage of the reunion for the 3rd time. The moment when Zara had taken Vale's hand had been transmitted across both human and Valari space, igniting something neither government had expected. Hope. Elder Voss gestured with one elongated finger toward the display. "The child asks a question we have forgotten how to answer. Why do we fight? What purpose does this hatred serve?" On the screen, Nyx could be seen sitting between Dr. Torres and her mother, chattering happily in a mixture of Valari and Standard, as she showed off the small medical scanner Torres had given her as a toy. The image was being broadcast simultaneously to refugee camps, military bases, and colony worlds across both territories. "My analysts report that ceasefire violations have dropped 70% since this footage was released," Chen admitted. "Our soldiers are asking questions, hard questions." "As are ours," Voss replied. "The young ones especially. They see this human doctor caring for our child, this captain risking his career for no strategic gain. And they wonder if we have been teaching them to hate the wrong enemy." The chamber's communications array chimed softly. A new transmission was incoming from Zerion Prime, where Captain Vale and his small diplomatic party had established a temporary camp near the memorial site that had become a symbol of reconciliation. Vale's tired face appeared on the screen, with the scarred landscape of the moon visible behind him. "Admiral Chen, Elder Voss, I'm transmitting the joint statement we've prepared." But before he could continue, a small figure darted into the frame. Nyx, now wearing a child's environment suit decorated with both human and Valari symbols, climbed onto Vale's lap with the casual confidence of a child who had never learned to fear the other species. "Elder Voss," she exclaimed in perfect Valari, her young voice carrying the crystal clarity of her people's speech. "Mama says you're very old and very wise. Can you tell me why the humans and Valari used to be friends before the fighting started?" The ancient Valari leader's expression shifted, the stern lines of command softening into something resembling grandfatherly affection. Little star singer, we were never truly friends. But we were not enemies either. We simply hadn't met yet. But now we have met, Nick said matter-of-factly. And Dr. Amelia taught me human songs, and Captain Marcus lets me help fix his ship. And Mama says humans dream in colors just like us. So why can't we be friends now? The simplicity of the question hung in the air like a challenge. Chen found herself thinking of her own grandchildren, safe in the inner colonies and wondering what kind of universe they would inherit. Perhaps, Elder Voss said slowly, wisdom comes not from age, but from hearts that haven't yet learned to hold hatred. Over the following days, the impossible began to happen. Soldiers' mothers on both sides sent messages to their children, sharing the footage and asking why they were fighting when children like Nick's could find friendship across species lines. Scientists who had been developing new weapons began collaborating on medical technologies. Artists created works celebrating the reunion, spreading them through underground networks that connected both civilizations. Dr. Torres had remained on Zarian Prime, working with Valari healers to document the hybrid medical techniques that had saved Nix's life. Her daily reports became a bridge between species, showing how their technologies could complement rather than destroy each other. The singing crystals can store and transmit not just communication, but empathy itself, she explained in one broadcast. Imagine medical networks where a human doctor could literally feel what a Valari patient experiences, or vice versa. Imagine the healing we could accomplish together. Captain Vale found himself at the center of something he had never expected. A grassroots peace movement led by soldiers who had grown tired of killing. Junior officers from both fleets began requesting transfers to humanitarian duties, and several had volunteered to help with the growing refugee assistance programs. But perhaps the most powerful moment came 3 weeks after the reunion, when Nick stood before the Joint Council via hologram, her small hand clasped in both her mother's and Dr. Torres's. "I want to give everyone a present," she announced with the seriousness only children could muster. "Mama taught me the Song of Connections. It's very old, from before the war. It helps people remember that we're all made of star stuff." What followed was unlike anything either species had experienced. Nix's voice, carrying the natural resonance of her people, seemed to reach across the void itself. But this time she sang in both languages, the melodic Valari harmonizing impossibly with human words. "We are children of the same stars, born from light that traveled far, different worlds but common ground. In each heartbeat, hope is found." "Azambain?" she sang. Reports began flooding in from across both territories. Valari refugees in human camps felt their despair lifting. Human soldiers on distant battlefronts found themselves thinking of home, rather than revenge. The song seemed to awaken something that had been sleeping in both species, the memory of what they could be together. Elder Voss wiped tears from his ancient eyes. "In our oldest stories, we speak of the star singers who would come to heal the wounds between worlds. We always thought it was prophecy. Perhaps it was simply hope." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "I'm issuing orders for a complete ceasefire. All human fleets are to withdraw to neutral positions pending formal peace negotiations." "As am I," Voss replied. "The Valari Harmony fleet will stand down." 6 months later, the Zirion Memorial, built around the small grave that had become a symbol of loss transformed into hope, hosted the signing of the Nix Accords. The peace treaty was named for the child whose survival had reminded two species that some things transcended war. As dignitaries from both civilizations gathered for the ceremony, Nix sat with her mother and Dr. Torres, teaching Captain Vale the Valari lullaby that had once carried across the void. Their voices, human and Valari, young and old joined in harmony, filled the space where hatred had once lived. In the end, humanity's greatest gift wasn't technology or military might, but the simple act of returning a child to her mother's arms. And the Valari's greatest gift in return was showing that love once shared could grow without limit. The stars, ancient witnesses to both war and peace, sang along. The end.